Systemic racism refers to systems, policies, structures, and institutions that disadvantage a person or group based on their race, color, ethnicity, or place of origin, especially those from minority groups. Systemic racism can be overt, covert, or unconscious. Overt racism involves written laws and policies that legalize or maintain the subjugation of minority groups or people. Second is covert racism. As overt racism became illegal across the world, covert racism became more commonplace. Covert racism refers to subtle, disguised, and racially constructed institutional barriers that assign a secondary role to a certain race. The third is unconscious racism or stereotyping, which involves mentally attributing the same characteristics to all members of a group, regardless of their individual differences. Justice organizations are mainly led by people who have lived through racism all their lives. They therefore have the accumulated experience and expertise to understand and create awareness about the scope, extent, and dimensions of racism, and to demand reforms and change from institutions that reinforce or support structurally racist policies. For example, justice organizations gather facts, figures, and statistics that can help policymakers, institutions, and entities to understand the drivers and manifestation of systemic racism and to design holistic and responsive policies. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights conceptualizes civil rights as entitlements that belong to all humans by virtue of being human. It guarantees equal societal opportunities, protection, and treatment to all human beings under the law, regardless of their race, religion, or skin color. So, any movement that aims to promote the realization, protection, and fulfillment of civil rights is a civil rights movement. So, the Black Lives Matter movement follows the path of previous movements that canvass for the actualization of the civil rights of marginalized peoples, especially Black people. They advocate for a world where all forms of overt, covert, and unconscious racism or police brutality against Black peoples can be fully dismantled. Tackling racism and promoting racial equality has been on the global agenda for a while, with significant progress made in different parts of the world. However, the events of the last few weeks remind us that equality alone is not enough to address systemic racism. It is time for us all to emphasize equity. Equity is the just and even distribution of benefits, opportunities, and burdens. For example, in the first year of law school, we were taught the maxims of equity, not equality alone. The society is made up of diverse people with different backgrounds, experiences, abilities, disabilities, and views. We were all born the way we are. So, to tackle systemic racism, policies, laws, and systems have to be more intentional in achieving diversity and equity. For example, HBKU has a clear diversity policy and an institutional commitment to maintain culturally and academically diverse staff of the highest caliber. So, enacting legislation or policies at the local level is a way of complying with such already existing international obligations. Legislation provides a formal mechanism through which a society can reject such reprehensible conduct. First, it clearly identifies and defines all forms of conduct that are racist. This clarity will help everyone to become more aware. Second, legislation is required to establish far-reaching sanctions and punishments for overt, covert, or unconscious acts of racism. Third, legislation can create relevant reporting requirements, obligations, and standards for monitoring performance in terms of promoting racial equity in all public and private services.